Welcome back to the deep dive. And honestly, a huge congratulations to you.
Absolutely.
You made it.
Yeah.
You're here, wrapping up the semester in Professor Sedge's abnormal psychology class at LACC.
It's really something.
This is our final deep dive together, focusing on Module 11, neurodevelopmental disorders.
And what a semester it's been. I mean, just thinking about the sheer amount of information, the complexity you've navigated.
It's a lot.
It really is. It shows incredible dedication from you and, tremendous organization from Professor Sedge to structure all this vital material.
Definitely. And this final module, it's really crucial. We're not just prepping for the final exam here.
No, not at all.
Think about it. If you're heading into social work or counseling, education, even, potentially becoming a parent someday, understanding these neurodevelopmental disorders is absolutely foundational.
Spot on. We're talking about conditions that almost always show up first in childhood.
Right.
They involve ongoing difficulties in really core developmental areas, intellectual abilities, academic skills, social functioning.
Things that can really shape a person's entire life.
Exactly. Which is why getting a handle on them early is so, so important.
Okay, so let's start with intellectual development disorders, IDD.
Right.
But before we even get to the disorder part, maybe we should touch on intelligence itself. This module defines it pretty broadly.
Yeah, it does. It's not just one thing, is it? It's this whole range of mental activities, reasoning, solving problems, learning new things, using language.
Influenced by genes and environment.
Absolutely. And to try and, measure something that complex, clinicians often use the intelligence quotient, the IQ score.
The classic bell curve, right? Average is 100, standard deviation of 15.
Precisely. So for IDD, the technical piece is significantly impaired intellectual functioning. That generally means an IQ score below 70.
Which is 2 standard deviations below that average of 100. But that number, 70, it's a clear line. But focusing only on the number can be a bit tricky in practice, can't it?
That's a really important point. Because IDD isn't just about an IQ score. I mean, what if someone scores 71 or 72?
Right.
The diagnosis hinges on that score being paired with significant deficits in adaptive functioning.
Adaptive functioning.
Yeah.
Can you unpack that a bit?
Sure. It means struggling in everyday life skills across at least 2 areas. Things like communicating effectively, social skills, living independently, self-care.
Stuff you need day to day.
Exactly. If those adaptive skill deficits aren't there impacting daily life, you wouldn't make the diagnosis, even with a lower IQ score. The number is sort of the entry point, but adaptive functioning shows the real-world impairment.
And often it's those adaptive issues like delays in sitting up, walking, talking that parents or caregivers notice first.
Very often, yes. And the causes, they vary. Sometimes it's genetic, like Down syndrome or Fragile X. Other times it might be brain malformations or environmental things. Fetal alcohol syndrome is one example, or issues around birth, perinatal problems.
And this module really hammers home a key point for you as future clinicians: avoiding misdiagnosis.
Oh, absolutely critical.
How does focusing on adaptive function help distinguish IDD from something else that might look similar, like maybe cerebral palsy or even the effects of neglect?
It forces you to dig deeper. For instance, a child with cerebral palsy might have motor difficulties that mess up their standardized test scores,
Sure.
but their underlying reasoning could be totally fine. You need to assess their communication, their problem solving using different methods, Make sure you're not confusing a physical or sensory issue or even trauma with a core intellectual impairment.
So really looking holistically.
Exactly. And that careful assessment is what makes early intervention targeted and actually effective.
That focus on communication leads us nicely into the next section: communication disorders.
Right. These are all about impairments in using, understanding, or applying language and speech. Basically anything that gets in the way of talking and connecting effectively.
Okay, this module lists 5 specific ones. Let's see: language disorder, speech sound disorder, childhood onset fluency.
Which is stuttering.
Right, stuttering. Then social pragmatic communication disorder and an unspecified category. That's quite a list.
It is, and you can kind of get lost in the details. But maybe for practical purposes, think about the range. On one end, you have something like speech sound disorder.
That's more about the mechanics, like articulation, making the sounds correctly.
Exactly, phonetics versus phonology. But then on the maybe more complex social end, you have social pragmatic communication disorder.
Okay, tell us more about that one. Why is it distinct?
Because this one directly impacts relationships and navigating social situations. Someone might have a great vocabulary, perfect grammar, but they struggle with the social use of language. Like maybe they interrupt constantly or miss sarcasm and humor,
Yep.
or can't adjust how they talk to different people, talking to a toddler the same way they talk to their professor.
Ah, so it's the unwritten rules of conversation. That links back to adaptive functioning again, doesn't it?
It really does. It's all interconnected. And speaking of foundational skills for school and life, let's talk about specific learning disorders, or SLDs.
Right. This is when someone has persistent difficulties with core academic skills, reading, writing, math.
Yeah, things that usually show up once kids hit school age. And importantly, these difficulties have to be substantially below what you'd expect for their age, causing real problems in school or daily life.
Dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia. Those are the common terms we hear.
Mm.
But what's really fascinating here, and the module points this out, is stepping back and looking at the bigger picture, the cultural lens.
Yes, this is such a critical point. Think about why we pathologize these specific difficulties so readily.
Because our society values literacy and numeracy so highly.
Exactly. Our Western sort of industrial and capitalist background places immense value on reading, writing, and arithmetic as markers of capability and success.
So the disorder isn't just inherent in the person.
It's also a reflection of what our specific culture demands. This module pushes you to consider, are we potentially overlooking or even devaluing other strengths? Someone might have maybe incredible artistic talent or mechanical skills or musical ability because we're so focused on remediating these specific academic deficits.
That's a powerful thought. The disorder exists partly because of the societal measuring stick we're using. Huge takeaway for anyone going into education or therapy.
Definitely food for thought. And that tension between how an individual functions and what society expects or accommodates leads us right into autism spectrum disorder, ASD.
Okay, ASD, defined here as a complex neurodevelopmental condition. Key features being persistent challenges in social interaction and communication.
Right, and also restricted repetitive patterns of behavior, interests, or activities.
And spectrum is the key word, isn't it? The symptoms can look really different from person to person.
Hugely variable, but the common thread is that these characteristics cause significant impairment in daily life, and crucially, they have to be present from early childhood.
And standard treatment often involves things like behavioral interventions, communication training.
Yes, those are common approaches, but here's where the conversation gets, well, really interesting and is currently evolving.
Okay.
The neurodiversity movement. This module explicitly brings it up. It reframes autism not necessarily as a deficit or something wrong that needs fixing,
But
as a natural variation in human brain function, a different way of processing the world.
Wow. Okay, so if you adopt that neurodiversity perspective, how does that change things practically, say, for a clinician or an educator?
Well, the goal shifts dramatically, doesn't it? Instead of trying to cure autism or make the person seem neurotypical, the focus becomes acceptance, understanding, and providing appropriate accommodations.
So supporting the individual in leveraging their strengths, maybe intense focus or pattern recognition.
Exactly. And working to make society itself more inclusive and accommodating of different neurological styles. It's about empowering autistic individuals and moving away from simply pathologizing difference. It's a major shift.
A really important perspective for future professionals to grapple with. Okay, let's pivot now to another major diagnosis, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD.
Right, ADHD. The core criteria involve persistent patterns of either inattention or hyperactivity impulsivity, or sometimes both.
And these patterns have to be present for at least 6 months, interfere with functioning, and be inappropriate for the person's developmental level.
Correct. And we usually talk about three main presentations: primarily inattentive, primarily hyperactive impulsive, or the combined type.
This module flags a couple of important points here. Prevalence, around 7% of kids globally.
Which is significant.
And also busting that myth that it's only a childhood disorder.
Absolutely. ADHD often persists into adolescence and adulthood. And another crucial point is the risk of it being missed or underdiagnosed, particularly in girls.
Right, because the inattentive type, which might look more like quiet disorganization, daydreaming, difficulty focusing, isn't as disruptive outwardly as the hyperactive type more typically seen in boys.
Precisely. So it often flies under the radar. That's a diagnostic pitfall you really need to watch out for.
So what about managing ADHD?
Management is key. Medications, often stimulants, can be very helpful for improving focus and reducing impulsivity for many people.
But it's not just about medication, is it?
No, definitely not. The module really underscores this. The best outcomes typically come from an integrated approach. That means medication combined with psychotherapy or behavioral therapy.
Okay.
Plus, really importantly, education and support for parents and teachers. The therapy piece helps build skills organization, time management, emotional regulation that medication alone can't teach.
All right, for our final section, let's quickly touch on the other categories in this module: disruptive, motor, and elimination disorders. Starting with disruptive, impulse control.
Okay. And here, the module draws a really important distinction for clinical practice between oppositional defiant disorder, ODD, and conduct disorder, CD.
ODD first, what defines that?
ODD is characterized by a lasting pattern of angry or irritable mood, argumentative or defiant behavior, or vindictiveness. Think arguing with adults, deliberately annoying people, blaming others, being easily annoyed.
It's directed mainly towards authority figures.
Often, yes. But where does it cross the line into the more severe conduct disorder?
That's the key question, isn't it?
It is. Conduct disorder involves a much more serious, repetitive pattern of behavior where the basic rights of others or major societal rules are violated.
Okay, like what kind of behaviors?
We're talking about things like aggression towards people or animals, bullying, fighting, cruelty, destruction of property like fire setting or vandalism, serious deceitfulness like lying or stealing, or other serious rule violations like truancy or running away.
So, significantly more severe and harmful actions.
Exactly. Often, a child who develops CD might have met criteria for ODD earlier, but CD represents a qualitative escalation in the severity and type of behavior. The impact is much greater.
Got it. Okay, moving quickly through the last couple of categories. Motor disorders.
Yeah, this includes things like developmental coordination disorder problems with planning and executing coordinated movements, making kids seem clumsy, and stereotypic movement disorder, repetitive, seemingly driven, non-functional movements like head banging or body rocking.
And tic disorders, like Tourette's.
Right. Tics are sudden, rapid, recurrent movements, motor tics or vocalizations, vocal tics. Tourette's disorder involves both motor and vocal tics present for at least a year.
What's important to know about managing tics?
A key takeaway here is that behavioral therapies can be really effective. Things like habit reversal training, HRT, or a broader approach called Comprehensive Behavioral Intervention for Tics, CBIT. These help individuals become aware of the urge to tic and learn competing responses.
Good to know there are effective non-medication options. And finally, just briefly, elimination disorders.
Just touching on them. Enuresis, which is repeated voiding of urine, usually at night, bedwetting, past the age where continence is expected, and encopresis, which is repeated passage of feces in inappropriate places.
And treatments there often focus on behavioral strategies.
Primarily, yes, things like scheduled toileting routines, maybe managing fluid intake for enuresis, or dietary changes, and addressing constipation for encopresis.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, a lot of different conditions here.
We really have.
If you had to pull it all together, connect these diverse disorders back to the bigger picture for our listeners, what's the unifying theme?
I think across almost all of these conditions, the absolutely critical takeaway for anyone going into a helping profession is the power of early identification and sustained collaborative intervention.
Collaboration being key.
Absolutely. Whether it's IDD or ADHD or ODD or ASD, achieving better long-term outcomes, things like improved educational success, better social functioning, stable employment later in life, it almost always requires a team effort. Caregivers, clinicians, educators, a community, everyone working together consistently over time.
And that brings us really to the end. Not just of this deep dive, but of this whole comprehensive course.
It does. And seriously, we want to genuinely acknowledge the effort you've put in. This has been demanding material, sensitive material.
Sure.
Committing to learning it, engaging with it all semester, that's huge. And tackling this final module on neurodevelopment gives you such powerful, critical insights into human development, into psychopathology.
Yeah. It really does. This knowledge isn't just abstract theory. It's incredibly valuable. It equips you, empowers you, really, to apply these clinical concepts